Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be recapping the 49ers 30-24 win over the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to be going over stats, pro football focus grades, QB pressures by the defense, some good, including Kittle, Grendo, the run game, Ricky Pearsall, and some bad, including the first half offense, penalties, not being able to cover CeeDee Lamb when it matters, and the almost disaster that was the fourth quarter. What the actual turning point in the game was, I want to dive into that. And then we're going to conclude with some miscellaneous notes. How do you feel right now? The way the West is looking. Will the Niners make a trade? McCaffrey ramping up for practice. Special teams changes probably not being made. Injuries. And of course, Nick Bosa's hat, which is a big nothing burger. Big win for the Niners to get into the bye 4-4. So let's get right into it. Well, if you are an executive for Sunday Night Football, you might not have liked how the third quarter unfolded with the Niners pulling away and getting up 27-10 to lead into the fourth quarter. But then Dallas made a game of it. And more specifically, the 49ers let Dallas make a game of it. The Niners holding on for a 30-24 victory, dropping Dallas to 3-4 and getting the Niners to 4-4 going into a much needed bye week. Let's just touch upon some quick overall stats. The Niners outgained Dallas by 177 yards, 2-0 in the turnover department in San Francisco's favor, courtesy of 2 interceptions of Dak Prescott. And the Niners won the time of possession battle by 6.5 minutes. Pro Football Focus grades top 5 on offense. Kittle, Debo, Jake Brendel at center, much maligned, had a good game. Brock Purdy and Kyle Juszczyk, the 3 lowest. Of course, it starts with Ronnie Bell on 15 snaps. Chris Conley, who played over 40 snaps at receiver, and Jordan Mason, only 11 snaps. On defense, top 5, led by a rookie, Renardo Green at corner. Brown, then D. Winters with 11 snaps, Demo and Fred Warner. 3 lowest, Floyd, Evan Anderson on 14 snaps, and Kalia Davis with 14 snaps as well. So the defense, let's just get into the pressure, or a stat that is a stat, but I don't really consider it much of a stat: quarterback pressures. So 22 total by the defense. Nick Bosa leading the way with 6 pressures and a sack. Sam Okiwanu, 5 pressures and a sack. Malik Collins at D tackle with 5. Leonard Floyd at the end with 3. Then Warner, Beal, and Elliott with 1 apiece brings you to 22. So aside from the 2 sacks, obviously by the 2 DNs, Bosa and Okiwanu, did we really feel like Dak was really under pressure? You can't say all game. Any D-line outside of the 85 Bears isn't really going to get pressure on a quarterback all game, but did it feel like he was harassed on a quarter of his dropbacks? If he had 22 pressures, and I think they threw the ball over 30 times, say 30, might be 38 times, don't quote me on that. That means he was under pressure more than half the time, right? 22 pressures, over 30 pass attempts. Didn't feel that way watching the game, which is why I think QB pressures is a stat, but it's not really a thing. And any other advanced analytics in terms of how PFF or other organizations are going to drum up pressure, or how the defense is altering what the quarterback is doing, get the quarterback off his spot. QB hits, I mean, obviously sacks, QB hits, I think is very legitimate. QB pressures, not so much. This is just an N of 1. I do not know everything, and I'm not going to say I have a super strong opinion on this, but when you look at the numbers, remember 31 pressures on Geno Smith, going back to that Seattle game. Do we feel like he was under pressure even more than half the time he was passing? No. 22 pressures on Dak. Did it feel like he was under pressure more than half the time he was throwing? No. It's a proximity statistic. It's moving a quarterback off his spot, getting him to move north, south, east, west off of his platform. When a pressure turns into a hit, when a pressure turns into a hit or turns into a sack, that's great. only 2 sacks. And the D-line is still in need of reinforcements or a philosophical type of tweak from Sorensen and Staley to help generate what I would call actual QB pressure. Let's start with the good. All right. And the biggest good or the greatest good there is getting a win, even if it's 6 points, pulling 4-4, tied, but not really in first in the NFC West. That honor goes to the Arizona Cardinals at 4-4, then Seattle, then San Francisco. The Rams pulling up the rear at 3-4, having played one less game. Now, the offensive play selection was a good. Why? Because it played into the formula that I and many others have noticed is a winning formula for San Francisco. 26 passes, also known as under 30, 36 runs, also known as over 30. And that could have been a formula that San Francisco could have gotten away with the way the first half was unfolding. Right? Penalties, not getting in the end zone, settling for field goals, down 10-3, down 10-6, coming out after the half and getting a touchdown was big. And then obviously having a 3 touchdown or 2 touchdown and a field goal third quarter, or however many they scored, 3 touchdowns in a field, 3 touchdown third quarter, the field goals in the fourth quarter to get it to 27-10 was good. But the Niners did not get away from their formula. Kyle did not get overly enamored with Brock, and more on that in the turning point, to keep Dallas honest, right? This is a defense that came in dead last or nearly dead last against the run, dead last running the football, averaging 77 yards per game. So to not get away from their formula, their plan, their identity of who they are offensively, even after Jordan Mason going out after only 11 plays and Isaac Guerendo stepping up big, in addition to Brock stepping up big running, was important and one of the keys for getting San Francisco on track. Just because a team is stifling your run in the first quarter or first half doesn't mean you necessarily go away from it. But we'll get back into the running game in a second. The pass offense, as I discussed on the last podcast, went through Kittle, needed to go through Kittle. He is right now their best receiving option with Ayuk out. And you can argue even with Ayuk in the previous 7 games, 6.5 games, he was still their best receiving option. And Kittle went 6 for 128 and a touchdown. Is still, even at 30, 31 years old, is a mismatch for linebackers. Beat Eric Kendricks, who was supposed to be a 49er, but instead he signed with the Cowboys, and Devondre Campbell signed on board. Beat him a couple times. Big explosive plays, making a catch on a slant and running away from Trayvon Diggs. The offense, passing-wise, needs to go through Kittle. And we're going to get into one of the reasons why when we get into the turning point. Ricky Pearsall being involved, had a big first half. All his receptions came in the first half, 4 for 38 yards. Had that nice end around in the second half for 39 yards. So 5 touches for 77 yards is Ayuk-like production, right? We're not going to nobody should be putting so much so soon on Ricky Pearsall's plate just because Brandon Ayuk is out. And this game also, Juwan Jennings was out. But a Brandon Ayuk stat line recently outside of the Cardinals game was kind of 4 receptions for 38 yards. Picking up that 39 yards on a carry, going 5 for 77 is probably your more often than not average Brandon Ayuk stat line, right? If you're he got to 1,300 yards last season receiving, that's obviously less than 100 yards per game. So in the 70s is where Pearsall or another receiver would need to be to replace Ayuk's production statistically. Now, there's obviously things that would be asked of Ayuk route running wise that they're not going to ask of Pearsall or Jennings as much, or it can't be done as much, or they're not going to draw coverage away as much as Ayuk would. But I think this is a nice follow-up game for Ricky, starting the Chiefs game, or not starting, but getting the most snaps of any receiver during the Chiefs game due to injuries and whatnot. And this was a nice follow-up. But it wasn't just the passing game, right? The running game, which felt like it couldn't get on track in the first half, although they gained 70 yards. They had 70 yards rushing, and they were basically on their way to their season average of 143. It just felt like the Cowboys were taking away runs when San Francisco needed a couple, coming out on first down. You saw Collinsworth going over it, basically run blitzing on every first down, blitzing when, or sending at least 5 most of the time when Brock was in shotgun. And San Francisco seemed to have a problem with that until they got into the second half. So 70 rushing yards in the first half, 156, in the second half for 226 rushing yards on the day, led by Isaac Guerendo. Now, this is a game, everybody, that you can get more excited about than the Seahawk game. When the Seahawk game was 8 rushes or 9 rushes for 23 yards, and then he has that big 76-yard run where I still maintain I think he got caught by Devin Witherspoon. This time, Guerendo goes 14 rushes for 85 yards, 1 touchdown, and another touchdown he could have had at the end, but he did actually slide. And that would have been a case where, you're up 6 already, going up 13 with a minute to go. You could have scored. I mean, 1, the spread was 5. So anybody who took the Niners giving 5, the spread was fine. It was already 54 points. They hit the over. So there was nothing, not to say he was doing anything fugazi by sliding, but getting up 13 with a minute to go would have been fine. The Niners still would have won the game, right? It's not like the Niners were up by 1. And if he scored, it's an 8-point game, or 7 if Carlson misses the extra point, and you're giving the ball back to Dallas. Different situation with a minute left. That's when you definitely slide. He still did the smart and unselfish thing to absolutely guarantee that the Cowboys did not get the ball back, because the Niners knelt it twice and the game was over. But if Guerendo scored, the game would not even have been down. Even though how bad it looked in the fourth quarter running into that, Dallas going up and down the field with the remaining amount of time, I don't think it would have mattered, but this was the safer play. And let's not forget about Brock, right? Let's not forget about Brock and his legs. 8 for 56 yards and a touchdown on a QB sneak. Brock took what was there decisively. The best play he made was that fake handoff, supposed to throw it to Debo on a tunnel screen on the right side. The Cowboys jumped it. He held it, ran forward, picked up over, I think, 15 yards. Now you could say, well, that's, Brock just took what they gave him. Listen, he didn't make the mistake. He didn't make a mistake by throwing it to Debo. He could have threw it over Debo's head, could have threw it at the ground, right? And just given up on the play. Could have panicked when he pulled the ball down and that play got blown up, pulled it down, immediately saw that it was open to run, and picked up a first down. Heady play by Brock. Great play awareness, pocket awareness. That was just one of his runs. Keeping, when he's scrambling for 4 or 5 yards in a first down, or 7 or 8 yards in a first down, obviously 8 for 56 is averaging 7, and 56 rushing yards is always going to be on the high end for Brock. But I always keep saying, if he could be in the 4 runs for between, say, 25 and 32 yards per game, no one's going to confuse him with Josh Allen or Lamar or Vic or Steve Young or even, someone like a Patrick Mahomes. But that type of mobility when needed, it's not mobility when drawn up by your OC. Josh Allen has designed runs. So does Jalen Hurts. So did Steve Young and Vic and Cunningham. He is not a 1 read and go quarterback. If he wants to be a 2 read and go quarterback or 3 read and go quarterback, I'm fine. But these are, and just think about it, if he runs it 20 times a game, that's 340 rushing yards on the year. That's probably over what Vegas would have said, Brock would have gained rushing wise. If he averages 30 yards a game and they play 17, that's 510 rushing yards a year, which is well beyond what we would have thought. That would have been well beyond what we thought a second running back for the Niners would have done if McCaffrey was healthy. Mason's well above that, already. Now his shoulder is banged up again. So the other dimension, and it's interesting how the running dimension for Brock is an evolution of his game. Doesn't it feel like it should be something instinctual for a quarterback that if something's not there, one, you have to have the wherewithal, go through your progressions. That's one. Two, pocket awareness. Feeling if there's someone around you, do I have to just sit, take a sack? Do I have to throw it away? Do I have the opportunity to run? And then actually taking off and making a smart run about it. What's interesting about the runs too, though? It's not just, did you guys notice this? It's not just feet first runs that are considered giving up. Even when Brock, or a quarterback, I guess, runs head first, it looks like, unless the Niners are just the beneficiary, well, that's the wrong word to use, of shitty spots, they're bringing the ball back to where the ball was when Brock initiated the head first dive. I could be wrong on this, but watch this kind of moving forward. It did not look like he got the benefit of the doubt on the slides where he was going head first. And my understanding, if anybody goes head first, including a quarterback, you are fair game. But the ball should then be placed where he's actually touched once he is down during a head first slide or dive. That doesn't seem to be the case, but just something maybe to watch moving forward. But it's a part of Brock's game that, again, just to go back to and tie a bow, that you would think is instinctual, but I think it's becoming a little bit more thought of, at least in terms of Brock. And I keep saying it's very honorable and the right thing to do in a lot of ways, keeping your eyes downfield as long as you can. But if you have that alley, you have that lane to pick up 3, 4, 5 plus, take it and take it sooner. Got to give some love to the defense in the good before we get to the bad. So the defense overall, 2 interceptions of Dak. So Jair Brown intercepted a deep pass down the sideline. And then Demo intercepted an intermediate throw as Dak was rolling to his left looking for CeeDee Lamb on the sideline. And that actually led to a touchdown. 7 points off of those 2 turnovers. It was the Demo pick. The Jair Brown pick was inside the 49ers 10, and they didn't do anything with it. They had to punt. And after getting down 10-3 and the Niners making it 10-6 with a field goal, the defense clamped down, forcing the Cowboys to go punt, interception, which led to a touchdown, punt, and punt. It fell apart a little bit. Well, not a little bit, it fell apart later in the second half in the fourth quarter, and we'll get there. But at least the Niners defense tightened up, even when it was 7-3 and Dallas was driving, holding the Cowboys to a field goal to make it 10-3 and keep it 1 score was big. 14-3 the way that the second half, 14-3 at the time would have felt like, this game could get away from us. 10-3, it's still 1 score. The Niners make it 10-6 going into the half. And the run defense, maligned for much of the season, super maligned coming out of the Chiefs game where they gave up 184 yards, 46 rushing yards in the first half. And yet may say like, that's not bad. Then they would average 92 yards allowed mathematically the whole game. Well, Dallas was averaging 77 yards a game. And the runs that they were getting from Ezekiel and Dalvin Cook were 3, 4, 5-yard gains, 5-yard gains. Dallas got away from the run mid to late third quarter and into the fourth because they had to throw to come back. But the Niners bottled up the run in the second half, allowing 46 yards in the first half, only 10 in the second half, 56 total yards, and kept Dallas around 3 yards a carry. Third downs, which has been an issue for the 49ers. The Niners offensively go 8 for 16, 50%. That's exactly where they want to be. And Dallas, 4 of 12 on third downs, 33%. And actually slightly better than that if you include the 2 fourth downs they went for, got 1, did not get the other. 5 of 14 total third and fourth downs. That's the defense doing its job on money downs. And special teams, little bit of love. Carlson, good on his 3 field goals, good on his 3 extra points. Niners punt returns, the number 1 punt return unit in Dallas in the league. 1 return for 14 yards. and kick returns, the Niners allowed only an average of 23. We're going to get more into the kick return schematics or function, in the bad, because that's something that I pointed out and wanted to share with you guys. But at least, special teams did not, they won the game, right? Special teams did not lose in the game. Special teams did not in any way put the game in jeopardy for them. And if Carlson's not perfect, it could be a different game. So let's transition from the good to the bad. And there was at least numerically, an equal amount of bad in my opinion. The first half offense, guys, was terrible. And the 49ers seemed to struggle with what the Cowboys were doing. And it's something that the Niners defense never does. And that's called a 5 or 6 man line. The Cowboys did not take away the run in the first half. Again, 70 rushing yards for San Francisco, but they made it difficult. They showed a 5-man line with a potential run blitz coming. They showed a 5 or 6 man line when the Niners were in shotgun that they were probably going to come after Brock. And more often than not, they did. They just didn't really get to Brock. But the Niners' first half offense was field goal, punt, turnover on downs, field goal, and punt. What they were not helped by were penalties. Overall, the more penalized team for more yards when compared to Dallas. 9 penalties for 73 yards, including taking back a Deebo Samuel touchdown wide open down the right sideline, then outrunning the Cowboys secondary. Came back on a hold by Eric Sauber. Isaac Grendo had a nice run, a nice sweep. Later on in the second quarter, that got called back on a hold by Kittle. So the tight ends offensively, at least in those instances, not helping out, but Kittle more than made amends for it with his game overall. Untimely penalties. Couldn't have had a penalty before Deebo's catch, right? Had to be on Deebo's catch. And when you saw the replay, you understood it was Sauber one-on-one with, I don't know if it was a corner or somebody blitzed Brock. Sauber engaged. Brock kind of stepped to his right, which as the defender was trying to disengage from Sauber hooked and held, and you heard Collinsworth multiple times. He could have held him probably 2 or 3 times on that play, taking a touchdown off the board. Now, I'm putting no defensive creativity on the list because there's watching the game and rewatching it. There's never any defensive creativity. And I said last podcast that usually there's about 20 to 22 or 23 quarterbacks that the Niners defense of rushing 4 and dropping 7 will have favorable success against. They're always going to wear down in the second half and fourth quarter. And we saw it again. But where were there some stunts on the defensive line? Absolutely. Was there disguising blitzes? Not really. Were there blitzes? Not really. Were they playing soft at times on 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8s, and playing basically to the sticks? And Dak took advantage of that a couple times. Yes, it's hard to, up until the fourth quarter, really get on the Niners defense the way that they played, allowing only 10 points through 3 quarters, right? But this, if people want to call this a get right game, and that's not to say that when you get up 27-10, you start experimenting with exotic blitzes and things that are different, but you have to figure at some point, even though things have been working for you for 3 quarters, the Cowboys at some point were going to adjust, or at the very least break through, get a touchdown. Unfortunately, happened to be 2 touchdowns. The Niners needed to adjust, right? And we're going to get into that in a couple minutes of how they adjusted to what Dallas was doing to open up the offense more in the second half. But I think the downfall of Nick Sorensen, unless he evolves in the second half of this season, is you cannot always rely on your front 4 when the front 4 is not dominant. You cannot rely on just a 4-man line when the offense gets inside the 10 or the 5 and they're going to rush it. They are going to power through not having enough beef on the D-line. That's not to say a 5 or 6 man D-line would stop a run inside the 3. Hell, teams score on that all the time. And they didn't have to worry about attempting to employ a 5-man D-line on Dallas because Dallas can't run the ball. But a team like Tampa Bay coming up after the bye, missing Evans and Godwin, Rachaad White having a pretty decent season and having a couple other backs that can run there as well. You don't want to give Baker Mayfield any easy throws off of play action because the Bucs are dominating the line of scrimmage. He is not at all creatively getting away from what they do or how they line up. Yeah, sure. Sometimes maybe they bring in their NASCAR package where it's Floyd and Bosa as the DNs. They'll move Okwuonu inside and then have either Malik Collins or Jordan Elliott as the one pure D tackle on the line. That seems to be the extent of how Sorensen is mixing things up on the line. If he's disguising coverages on the back end, I mean, I think it's probably still more talent than what Sorensen is doing. And then that talent got all sorts of confused in the second half. So let's transition to, what was bad? Covering CeeDee Lamb. 13 for 146 and 2 touchdowns. Those 2 touchdowns coming in the fourth quarter. Big chunks of those yards coming in the fourth quarter on those 2 touchdowns. But they let Dallas back in the game up 27-10. Up 20-10. I texted one of my buddies, said, they're up 10. This does not bode well for us because the Niners can't hold 10-point leads. Who would have thought that they almost couldn't hold a 17-point lead? Didn't everybody, I'm sure people are out there when they got up 10, were like, there's a little bit of relief because you're making it a 2-score game, but then there's remembrance of the number 10 and how that's a bad omen for the team. Maybe that's why Ronnie Bell sucks, because his number's 10 and the Niners can't hold 10-point leads. Ridiculous. But when you get up 17 and it's 27-10 and you're getting into the fourth quarter and you're seeing that Dallas really isn't able to muster anything, you start feeling good. 3 scores, you start feeling good knowing that there's only a quarter left. But what happens? Dallas drives. Nobody covers CeeDee Lamb on a crossing route. And based on what Collinsworth saw, I mean, it was a blown coverage no matter what, whether they were playing man on one side or zone on the other, or it was just a straight up man bust. It's not like no one on the Niners secondary, whoever was covering CeeDee, if it was man, got picked. He just ran and there was no one within 15 yards of him. Ridiculous coverage bust. Terrible. And then the next drive, so 27-17, the Niners get a field goal to make it 30-17. So now we're up to, it's not 10 anymore. Maybe that's why the Niners won. Now the lead is 13. Jair Brown, whose responsibility was Jake Ferguson, who was the receiver lined up on his far right side, takes a terrible angle getting to Ferguson, who looked like he was running just a deep shot. Lamb was inside. Renardo Green was covering him. Looked like he was running a post. The angle that Brown takes was so bad and so sharp. Runs into Renardo Green. Brown's able to recover and bounce over to Jake Ferguson. But Lamb is wide open for the touchdown to make it 30-24 with about, 3.5 minutes to go. That's not a communication issue. Jair Brown has got to know, one, you have someone, it looked like locked up in man, Green on Lamb, right? 2, if his responsibility is the tight end, not that there's no hurry to get there, but you don't have to run to that tight end like with your hair on fire. And if there's someone inside anyway, you have to be aware of at least that route. You don't know what he's running. If he's running a curl and in and out, a post. If you're Jair Brown, you don't know what he's running. So you maybe have to be aware of, let that route develop in front of me before I can get to the tight end. Because who's the bigger threat this game? Jake Ferguson or CeeDee Lamb? So don't get in the way and mess up the CeeDee Lamb route, which he did. I'm sure all this isn't going across Jair Brown's mind when he's trying to get over to Ferguson, but the angle that he took was terrible, letting up a touchdown. So now you can say, well, all right, so There's 2 busted coverages, and that's why the Cowboys got in it. True, but there shouldn't be 2 busted coverages. There shouldn't be another game where it feels like, oh, Niners up 2 scores. This time Niners up 3 scores, and the game is slipping away from them. And then when the Niners go 3 and out their next drive and Dallas gets the ball back, did anybody feel like the Niners were going to stop them? If people had to put money on it, didn't you feel like Dallas was going to score and win the game? When the Niners were up 13, I looked at my son and said, they're going to lose this friggin' game. They're going to find a way, because 13 points is not a safe number the way 14, 15, 16 is, and certainly 17, that they were going to lose the game. Same old Niners defense in terms of a lead evaporating. And I don't care if anyone says, well, those are correctable things because of the angle that Brown took and the bust in the secondary. I don't care. That was week 8. That shit shouldn't be happening. Will a Niner team or another team make some sort of a bust or bad play week 14, 15, 17? Sure. But the inopportune times that the Niners made it was what gave the Cowboys life and made all of us curl our toes and squeeze our asses to make and that feeling of dread of, uh-oh, here it comes again. And now we're sticking with bad. The offense did not close out when they should have. Did they? At the end of the game, the very last drive with Guerrero sliding, sure. But that, even if they didn't get a first down, they would have kicked a field goal. They would have been up 7, giving it back to Dallas with no timeouts. Different situation. When you get the ball back 3.5 minutes to go, and you need basically probably 2 first downs. 1 first down would be great. 2 first downs to win the game, and you go 3 and out. That is the offense not closing out. Now, kudos to Brock, because that was, I think on first down, they might have gained 4 or 5 or 6 yards, say 4 yards. Second down was when Brock got blitzed from the blind side, held onto the ball. That could have been disastrous, but that was huge. And then third down was a dump off, one of the rare running back dump offs to Juice. Doesn't get the first down. Quick 3 and out, back to Dallas with 1 timeout remaining and over 3 minutes to score. The defense did close out on 4 straight plays. Dak did throw a nice bomb down the left sideline. I think it was to Turpin. Ball went off his face mask and through his hands. I don't think he would have gotten the second foot inbounds yesterday. Anyway, and coming off of, just real fast, coming off of the Steeler game, George Pickens, who I have on 2 of my fantasy teams, didn't need him, wouldn't have mattered, makes a catch against the Giants, lands on his left foot, gets bumped by the Niners cornerback back of the end zone, gets his left foot down again, then pushed out of bounds, called no catch, no touchdown. I think this is a rule that has to change, because and people were saying it on social, and they're right. Are you telling me if you jump on your left foot 15 times by the sidelines and then go out of bounds and your right foot doesn't come down, that's not a catch? That's a stupid call. If 1 knee equals 2 feet, then 2 feet equal 2 feet. A left and a right should be the same as a left and a left, or a right and a right. I think that needs to be changed. How often do you see this happening? Right? I mean, because then you can start teaching cornerbacks that if someone's going up for the ball on the back of the end zone or the sideline, don't even play the ball. Just play one of the legs. Grab one of the legs and lift him up out of bounds so he can't get the second one down. I know, right now they're being taught, like, push him out of bounds if it's close. Like, there's no judgment calls anymore. I think I think it's a bad call. I think it's a bad rule. If you get 2 feet down, you get 2 feet down. I don't care if it's the same 2 feet. End soliloquy. Let's go back to the game. So the defense got, a closeout on 4 straight plays, which they needed. Okay. Does it erase the last 2 drives of miscommunication and blown coverages? Somewhat. And you could say yes, because they got the win, but the defense, no mistake about it, made this game more anxious and agita inducing, Italian word, than it needed to be. And the offense didn't close out at a more needed time getting the ball back than when they got the ball back inside the Cowboys 30. And Anders Carlson, this isn't necessarily this is just a heads up. So, okay, all right, two things. Let's start with Brandon Aubrey, the Cowboys kicker. Did you notice that he wasn't even trying to get the ball into the end zone on kickoffs? The one, he tried a squib kick that bounced in front of the 20, which brought the ball back out to the 40. I haven't seen that yet since the dynamic kickoff return. But the Cowboys special teams players and coach know what we all know. The Niners special teams is trash. So kick it in the landing zone between the 20 and the goal line. Let Patrick Taylor or whomever take it out. And on average, they did a pretty good job. Whenever they returned it near or just outside the 30. But Aubrey wasn't even attempting. He was taking 2 steps and kicking, wasn't even attempting to get into the end zone. And he could kick it out of the end zone every kick if he put up a decent effort. Every kickoff except the last kickoff for Anders Carlson, he only took about 4 or 5 yards back, kind of walked into the kickoff and kicked it inside the 5 every time. If that was Brian Schneider's strategy, he should be fired. If anybody coached and actually told Carlson to not run into the goddamn kick, like how all kickoffs in the past have been run into by kickers, meaning they're about 10 yards back, they run into the goddamn ball, they put so much momentum into it that they basically throw their bodies over the tee to get as much force behind the kick as possible. Every one of Anders Carlson's kicks prior to the last one that got them up that got them to 30 was a lazy 4-yard walk up and kick. Is it a coincidence that the last kickoff Carlson took 11 yards, ran into it, and kicked it deep into the end zone? Why the fuck, Brian Schneider and Anders Carlson, were you not doing that from the get-go? That has to be coaching. I can't imagine Carlson taking it on his own, saying, "Oh, we're gonna make a point on special teams. Let me kick it inside the 5 and have our return coverage unit tackle him." Dumb as fuck. You're kicking off from the 35-yard line. Remember, kick it into the end zone every single goddamn time. That was an adjustment that was made, but way too late. It did not come back to bite the Niners, but don't think someone, maybe just me, noticed, and they didn't change that approach until the game was on the line and they were up 30 to 17 at that point. Turning point, and I mentioned this. First half, not good for San Francisco. Second half, much better. Everything worked better. The pass, the running game, remember 70 yards in the first half, 156 yards in the second half. Purdy got going. Everything was more balanced, efficient, and explosive. Well, here's potentially one of the reasons why. Brock Purdy's air yards dropped in the first half from 9.7 air yards. And based on where I got this from, I'm not sure if it's air yards per completion or air yards per attempt. Either one, it means pushing the ball downfield. Air yards. 9.7 in the first half to 3.9 in the third quarter. That was the big quarter where they scored 21 points. And his production was otherworldly. 7 of 7 for 103 yards and a touchdown in the third quarter. The third quarter was the turning point. The Niners offense, going back to more of what the offense was the past year and a half, end of 2022 and into 2023, they looked more like the 49ers offense of old than what we've seen in the first half of 2024. Do we want to contribute everything to that? No, I'm not making a complete blanket generalization. But when your Air yards drop by about 65%. And you are moving the ball well. Now, did the running game have something to do with it? And Grendo and finding holes? Sure. But the ground game opens up the pass, and vice versa. The pass opens up the ground. More so, the running game opening up the passing game. But the Niners going back more to a not conservative, but intermediate or short passing game. Efficiency, 7 of 7 in the quarter. 103 yards and touchdown. Can't get better than that, right? Unless he threw 2 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns. But efficiency through the roof. What does everyone say about Brock? And it's almost like an underhanded compliment that he's an efficient quarterback. Efficient QB play has gotten the Niners to an NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl. Aggressive and potentially explosive quarterback play maybe isn't what this team needs. And maybe I am just completely guessing here. It's got nothing basic on facts, but maybe the feeling from Shanahan and Brock is without Ayuk, without Jennings, without CMC when they were missing Debo last week, that not that Brock has to do more, but do they feel like they have to push the ball more? Because do they feel like defenses are sitting on the shorter stuff? Maybe. But even if they're sitting on the shorter stuff, give your playmakers opportunity to make plays. Working the intermediate area, short to intermediate areas of the field helps completion percentage, gets the ball in play, better possibility of doing something with the ball when it's caught versus when it's not. Now, Brock's legs obviously opened up some things as well, but I would love for Shanahan to take a hard look at the third quarter. And granted, the Cowboys defense isn't anything great. Run defense is terrible. Pass defense is middle of the road. They were missing 3 defensive ends and a corner. They're just as banged up, if not more so in some ways, in San Francisco. The Niners were missing players on O, Cowboys missing players on D. Maybe that cancels out to some degree. But what we saw in the third quarter is, I think, symbolic and hopefully emblematic of what we are going to see moving forward from San Francisco. That's not to say you don't take the shots that are there. The shot he took to Debo was a touchdown. Called back. The shot in the first quarter they took to Debo lined up in the backfield, basically runs a wheel route, beats the linebacker, big, what was that, 40-plus yard gain. When they're there and you have favorable matchups, you take it. But it's okay to take what the defense gives you. It's okay. Get the ball out of your hands quickly. It obviously mitigates pass rush, mitigates Brock getting hit. I mean, how many times you hear Chris Collinsworth, Brock knew he was going to get drilled. He got the ball out, and I think once or twice he didn't get hit at all. He was possibly going to get drilled on a free rusher, but Brock got rid of it, and the rusher just went by Brock or decided not to hit him because it was too late, whatever. Third quarter offense is the Niners offense. They're not always going to play Dallas. I get it. They're not always going to play a bad defense and a bad team. But this is the offense where they're more successful. Hopefully McCaffrey coming back adds to that short to intermediate check down, opening things up, maybe McCaffrey drawing double coverage to even further open up, throws inside the numbers, 7 to 12 yards downfield. I don't think it's coincidence, though, that the Niners put up 21 and Brock was perfect, given the type of offense and passes they were completing. So let's just conclude. How do we feel, right? How do we feel? 4-4 feels a lot better than 3-5, right? The Niners could remain buyers now at the trade deadline, not sellers. And people, such bad, uninformed fans everywhere, but especially on social media, even before this game. Oh, no matter what, the Niners need to sell. They need to hit a soft reboot, get whatever you can for Charvarius Ward and I don't even know what other players. Some moron mentioned about, trade Brock and draft a quarterback. And then, and maybe he meant that in the offseason, but either way, you're a moron in season, off season anyway. Brock didn't silence any of the doubters, right? Because they beat Dallas, which is a rivalry game, but Dallas is terrible. So it's not like you can't, even though, Brock 56 yards rushing, I think had close to 300 yards, all purpose yards. what did he throw? 2 touchdowns total or 3? I can't keep track because now my brain is just going the whole 4-4 thing. The Niners with a win are right there in the NFC West. The NFC West is, you want to say it's a competitive division? Sure. You got 3, 4-4 teams and the Rams at 3-4. Even at 3-5, though, I want people to think about this. Even at 3-5, they would have been a game back of the Cardinals or Seahawks, who they play again, and a half a game back of the Rams, who they play again. I'm expecting them, or hoping / expecting them to sweep the West the rest of the way. That's 3 more wins. Maybe they go 2-1 and they still get, three wins in the West. But even at 3-5, the West is winnable. You don't sell until you are out of it. You sell if you're the Jets, the Giants, the Panthers, the Browns, the Patriots. They traded DN Josh Uche to the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going for it. They're going for that 3P, bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, bringing in another pass rusher. And why not? You're what, 6-0 now, 7-0? Go for it. The first thing you have to go for is the West. They're going to win that. The next thing you're going for is the number 1 seed. They're going to get that. Thanks, Ravens, for losing to the Browns of all teams. But you do not start selling the farm unless, and it's funny how teams in the NFL, because you see every year teams going from like maybe second to third or worst to first, or it's not like baseball where usually the teams that are sellers are, you're obviously a bad team selling a good player who has a tremendous contract that you just want to unload to a Yankees or a Dodgers or a Padres or a Mets, whatever it may be. The NFL, there really isn't that sell-off because you don't know what's going to happen next year. Yeah, can we generally say that Patriots will probably be bad next year? Yeah. Panthers will probably be bad next year? Yeah. Jets and Giants? Probably. But who saw the Commanders coming? Jaden Daniels, being talked about as an MVP candidate, sure. Rookie of the year, sure. And that Hail Mary, while it was awesome, was pure luck and more bad defense by the Bears than anything that the Commanders did or Jaden Daniels did. But even at 3-5, the Niners would have still been in the race for the NFC West, right? It's a logjam. It's a shit show. I don't know how teams are going to separate, but the Niners have an opportunity with players coming back like McCaffrey, like Greenlaw, probably still not for a month, like Yetur Gross-Matos, maybe Hufanga. Jennings coming back, Mason with his shoulder now. Hopefully the bye gives him time to get healthy. That they have players coming back to help with this stretch run, and they could bring in someone to help with the stretch run. And in terms of trades, to me, it's not a receiver, especially if the Niners get back to their philosophy of running the ball well and that short to intermediate pass game and take shots when they're there, because you have to take shots to keep the defense honest. You can't throw 10, 12-yard passes all game. You have to take shots to keep the defense honest, especially when they're giving you favorable matchups. But Zadarius Smith of the Browns, Chase Young of the Saints, Azeez Ojulari of the Giants, hell, even Jadeveon Clowney of the Panthers. Now, Clowney's got the most money remaining on his contract of those 4, so maybe he gets traded to a good team or a potentially playoff team, and he reworks his contract. Somebody's still only 31 years old, 32 years old, but someone else on the edge. And yes, Sam Okawanu he's been a nice story. He's really come out of nowhere to provide some pass rush. Leonard Floyd is underperforming. Yetur Gross-Matos is hurt. Nick Bosa only has 4.5, 5.5 sacks on the season, and may end up with around 10 or 11, which I think is a good season for a DN, but that's under where we're expecting someone like Nick Bosa to be. But he's not being helped out by not having an adequate, and Leonard Floyd should be an adequate bookend on the other side, but not performing like it, not being helped out by his defensive coordinator. If you're not helping your sending 5 or 6 helps your D line out, right? Now they got to figure out who you're going to block, who's maybe going to come free, who you're going to sacrifice and leave open, hoping your quarterback's going to get rid of the ball. Those 4 rushers have to work for sacks, have to work for pressures. And Sorensen is not doing the D-line any favors by not bringing more to help them generate pressure. So if there's a trade at all, the only position I see happening is DN, and I'm recording this on Tuesday morning. I don't know if any of the players I mentioned, again, Zadarius Smith, Chase Young, Azeez Ojulari, Jadeveon Clowney, and probably other lesser named, cheaper DNs, someone like a Charles Amena, who, not him, because I think he's still on IR with the Chiefs, but someone like that, who they brought in 3 years ago, could be someone that could help reinforce the D-line. You got CMC ramping up practicing. Heard Shanahan say, and Lynch, that there's been no setbacks. They're going to get him in this upcoming week, a bonus practice on a Monday, give the players 5 days off and see how he is for the full practice week, week after next. Hopefully there's nothing that's going to flare up, hold him back, and he's going to be eased back into the game plan per Shanahan. Let's see how he could, if he sticks with that. I mean, Christ, Debo coming off of pneumonia. I said jokingly to one of my buddies, yeah, watch Shanahan start him out at running back to start the game, which he did. Now, if you're healthy enough to play, you're healthy enough to play wherever, but I didn't expect Debo to start out at running back. Maybe start him out at running back and use him as a decoy like they did later on that 45-plus yard wheel route. But my God, it's like, oh, you're healthy. You need an oxygen mask to breathe. Oh, we'll still put you at running back. I mean, I would love to see Shanahan actually ease McCaffrey in if he's healthy enough for the Tampa game. And naturally, Shanahan's hand might be forced, because if Mason isn't 100%, or if he misses the game because he re-aggravated his shoulder, then it's a Guerendo, McCaffrey, and Taylor running back trio. Shanahan, when asked about special teams, I guess he was in a roundabout way asked if Brian Schneider would be fired. That does not look like it's going to be happening. I don't wish for anybody to be fired. And per Shanahan quote, I think, this past game was a step in the right direction. All right, you're 1 for 7 on special teams in terms of coverage. And yes, it happened against one of the better kick and punt return units in the league, but this is the outlier, Kyle. This is the outlier of 8 games. I'm still, again, I don't wish for someone to be fired, but keep them on staff like the Jets did with Nathaniel Hackett, but make someone else be the lead special teams play caller or coach or whatever. No one trusts in the fandom Brian Schneider, and we don't count. We're just fans, but it's looked bad for 7 games, especially with what I brought up about Anders Carlson's not really trying to kick off all game against Dallas except the last kickoff. I mean, he kicked one off out of bounds. He did his laissez-faire 4 steps into it and kicked the goddamn ball out of bounds. I think when they were up 27-10. There's the Niners in a nutshell. There's the Niners special teams in a nutshell. Get up by 17, but hey, we'll give you the ball at the 40. I mean, come on. Something's got to be done. Kyle doesn't want special teams to lose them games. It has, and it may continue to. They need a different voice and a different philosophy there. It's just not happening at the bye. Injuries coming out of the game. We mentioned Mason's shoulder, 11 plays and out. Debo hurt his ribs. Jennings sells a hip issue, although McCaffrey, keep saying McCaffrey when I want to say Shanahan. Shanahan expects Jennings back after the bye. That's great. I don't really believe Shanahan or Lynch or really any coach in the NFL when it comes to injuries, because we didn't think that he would miss 1 game, let alone 2 games. Hopefully with the added rest, yes, he is back for the bye. Renardo Green, ankle sprain day to day. D. Winters had a concussion. He's in the protocol. And Chris Conley, hamstring. He's considered week to week. They have the bye week to rest up. They should be getting all these players. I would imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players back, that they should get 4 or 5 or maybe all of them back for the Tampa game. McCaffrey would be a nice to have. Do they need McCaffrey to beat the Buccaneers? No. So if he needs that extra week, do they need him to beat Seattle the following week? No, but that doesn't mean you keep sitting him. At some point, he's has to be integrated back into the offense. And if the doctors and the imaging, MRIs, whatever they're going to give, looks at the tendons and they visibly improved to whatever imaging they gave 8 weeks ago, you just can't keep them on bubble wrap until all right, now we need you, or here's the playoffs or whatever. Still got to get into football shape, right? And they still have to go through practices to get his cardio back and to make sure the legs and the calves and the Achilles are feeling okay. But if he doesn't start, if he doesn't play against Tampa, I wouldn't read anything super bad into it. And apparently it sounds like Greenlaw would be week to week coming out of the bye. And again, he had surgery in February. The bye would be November. That's only 9 months. 9 months coming back from an Achilles tear. I think people have got to be patient with Greenlaw. He's not going to be 100%. He's not going to be 100%. But is Greenlaw at 80%, 75 going to be better than Devondre Campbell? I know a lot of fans right away want to say, oh, yes, definitely, absolutely. I don't know, right? We don't know how he looks, his lateral agility, quickness, straight line speed, stop and start. And lastly, but not least, a lot has been made about Nick Bosa wearing his MAGA hat, crashing an interview at the end of the game. I don't have a ton to say about this other than, guys, shut the fuck up. And this is coming from someone who has zero political affiliation. The only quasi-factual thing coming out of this is if Bosa is going to be fined, because the Niners, the NFL has a very strict dress code, right? Like you can't wear certain color socks or shoes, or you can only put stuff on your shoes if it's a my cause, my cleats type of week. The NFL has come down on players trying to, bring awareness to things like breast cancer. When it's not breast cancer awareness month, the NFL is very strict with that. Now, in terms of the rules post game versus during the game, I'm not sure. And I'm not going to believe everyone or anyone that I've read on social media in terms of if Bosa should be fined because of wearing unapproved apparel after a game, during an interview, whatever. People comparing this to Kaepernick kneeling. By the letter of the law, is it the same thing? I'm not sure, right? He decided to kneel during the national anthem in a very visible way to protest certain things about the country, which he has every right to do. Is Bosa protesting anything? No. I mean, do you want to say, is he protesting Democrats because he's wearing a MAGA Republican hat? I guess, but that's a ridiculous thing to say. He's showing his support for Donald Trump, which he's allowed to. He's a Trump fan. But guess what, guys? From what I've read, and again, take it with a grain of salt, but apparently so is Kittle, so is Purdy, so is Juice. Does it matter? Does it matter? I know there are a lot of people out there that don't like Trump. There's a lot of people out there that don't like Kamala Harris. Fine. But for people reaching for stuff, oh, he better be, and even Niner fans, I'm a Niner fan, but I think Bosa should be, shut up, douchebag. Not shut up like, oh, shh, don't say anything. Maybe the NFL will forget and not suspend Nick Bosa. This is such like it's not a nothing burger because people are talking about it. It's getting way too much run on social media, and I'm talking about it. But I'm here trying to be a little bit level-headed of who gives a shit. Yeah, he crashed it, wore the hat, went like this, and ran away. 3 seconds worth of someone showing support for his candidate. He was asked about it in the post-game press conference. He said, I'm not going to say anything about it other than it's an important time. And people are wondering, oh, it's an important time. What does that mean? It's election season, morons. There's going to be an election next week for the presidency, also known as the most powerful position on the planet. So yes, it's an important time. And he's been an unabashed, although not vocal, but he's been at Trump rallies. You've seen pictures of him. That's fine. I don't know where the NFL is going to come down on this, but for people, fans, Twitter twats getting so worked up, and I'm not getting worked up over Bosa. I don't care. I'm getting worked up over the nobodies, the Twitter twats, the people that have such a strong reaction to what he did or are condemning what he did or are saying if the NFL doesn't condemn what he did like Kaepernick, then it proves that the NFL is a racist organization. I'm not so sure it's the same thing, guys. And if the NFL does have that strict dress policy, on what players can wear before, during, or after a game, and he gets fined, fine. I'm okay with that. That's letter of the law. He got fined. Like Trent Williams during the Chief game, he got fined like some sort of ridiculous amount. It was like $11,842.32. That's not right, but it got down to the cents decimal points. And the person who hit Trent Williams first got fined, I think, in the $8,000 range, but with change. There was change involved. Letter of the law. If there's a letter of the law fine coming for Bosa, that's okay. But for all you poli-sci asshole fans that would jerk off Trump or finger Kamala or fist either one of them, chill the fuck out. This country has been way too divided for a decade or thereabouts. It's always been divided when it comes to political lines, right? You can't talk religion, you can't talk politics with people because folks are so dug into their party and candidate. And that's fine. I'm not into that like that. Yes, voting season is important. It has a ripple effect on a lot of things in this country, the economy, foreign affairs, how we treat our veterans, our homeless, people of different racial classes and socioeconomic statuses. It's going to have an impact because the parties stand for different things. But getting bent out of shape and making these proclamations and bringing race into it and bringing a whole lot of things into it that doesn't need to be, that you are baiting for clicks or engagement or just pounding your chest because, again, I'm on social media, behind my keyboard, behind my phone. No one is going to confront me about what I'm saying, so I'll just say whatever the heck I want. That'll never stop. It'll never, ever stop, right? And it's going to get the next week plus, I forget the exact voting day, is going to get bad. And if anybody is still watching or listening to this, let's just all remember, guys, we're one country. Whichever candidate wins, it is not the end of the world. Like, quite literally, whichever candidate wins, I highly doubt there's going to be World War III, right? Wasn't that the main issue that people had with Trump 8 years ago? He can't be hot. You can't send him for presidency. He's too unstable. He's gonna, you can't give him the code to the nukes. Didn't happen. And whereas the world's in a different spot and the Supreme Court put us in a different spot in terms of presidents being able to be a little bit more unchecked now is concerning for any president. I don't think this is the end of the world or a reason to riot or a reason to storm the Capitol or a reason to incite violence because your preferred candidate did not win. And I might have more to say about this in the next podcast. I'm not sure if it's going to happen before or after Election Day, but remember, guys, obviously your voice matters, your vote matters, but this is not an end of the world scenario. Hate your neighbor, rip down their flags, or set fire. Like, we're a developed country, guys. We're better than this. And I think what Nick Bosa did is fine. I don't care. It made me chuckle. And if he gets fined by the NFL again for some sort of an power rule, that's the end of it. And that's all it should be. That concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, for making us part of your busy routine. Heading into the bye, the Niners at 4-4, a share of first place, sort of, kind of, maybe not really. And we'll see if the Niners are buyers. They are not going to be sellers, morons. They are not. There is going to be a reset of the roster. Let me just end with this. There is going to be a reset of the roster. It's called the offseason. It's called the decisions they have to make. Do they sign Ward or Demo? Not going to sign both. Are they going to sign Hufanga? Are they going to sign Greenlaw? Are they going to keep Javon Hargrave or designate him a post-June 1st cap casualty and save $20 million on the cap? There's going to be a soft reset of the roster based on personnel choices. Debo. But it's not going to happen in season. Yankees down 3-0. Go Dodgers. Knicks are 1-2. Who cares? It's still early in the basketball season. I really don't give a crap about hockey. So whatever you're doing between now and we speak again, could be Friday, could be Saturday. Would like to get another one in before next week, where we are going to be previewing the Niner-Tampa game. So whatever you're doing between now and then, enjoy it. Dodgers, go for the sweep. Whatever you are doing, though, stay happy, healthy, and safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.